1, 2, 3, check. 1, 2, 3, check. Longevity, hello. Is it too low? Should I move it up on my tie maybe? It's right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, check. Can everyone hear me? No? No? They can't hear me.
Testing, testing.
It seems like they hand tilted or something, like one's going to one side and one's only going to the other side. I don't know why. I don't understand why they're not going to the sides. Well, I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry.
You're gonna have to switch it again.
Yeah, but can't keep doing that.
Just for this part.
Okay, switch it. Yeah.
Resume, and I would never be able to memorize it. So, doctor, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Should I use this mic or is this okay? Okay. So I went to medical school at Loma Linda University for my MD. I trained at Stanford University for my residency in emergency medicine. I'm a board certified emergency physician. I still practice. I have my master's in preventive medicine. And so hopefully we'll be able to share some of that aspect, and hopefully we won't have any of the emergency aspect here today.
Exactly. Well, that's great. We're looking forward to your presentation, doctor. We'll take no more time, and the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Am I on? 20 years, it's fine. But I am implementing a program on myself that will actually reverse the signs of aging. This is the mole, right? This is the root, and what color was it? It was gray, and now it's black. And what's very interesting is I've got a root here. I had lost a little something there, and it looks like it was black, and then it grayed out, and then I'm getting it back. Here's another one. This was just from yesterday. Again, right here, black again, a little gray, and then right here, gray, and I've got it back growing black. But some people will say, well, I don't dye my hair, but what about makeup, right? Do those crow's feet bother you? Do those wrinkles bother you at all? Maybe you're not worried about the gray hairs, but maybe you're like, whoa, my skin's really sagging now. Is it possible to reverse those things naturally? How many do you think you could improve your wrinkles just naturally from the inside out? Wow, a lot more people this time. Now I want you to show you, this is my fiance, Ashley, and this is no makeup. This is zero makeup. Is it possible to find a program, to find a way to build the inside out, to actually enjoy the fountain of youth? What do you think? Is that possible? Wow, good. And many people will say, well, you just need to find the right food, right? How many people have heard that? You just got to eat the right diet. But despite all of these efforts, we all seem to follow the same path. We all seem to age, and eventually, we do not want to face the inevitable, right? And if you think about it too long, you get depressed. But there is hope. They have done recent studies on organs in the body, especially the brain. And they found that the brain capacity is so large that most of us, when we die, we've only used about 3 to 5% of our brain. How many of you knew that? That we actually don't use all of our brains, most of us. Even people that are the Einsteins, the Schweitzers, they only use about 7 to 10% of their brain. The brain actually has a capacity for more like 1,000 years or more. So maybe we were not designed to live 70 to 80 years. Maybe we were designed to live longer. Maybe we were designed to live forever. Now, the following people groups I'm going to share about don't live forever, but this was an old article from National Geographic, and they looked at areas where people lived a lot longer than you and I. Now, those areas of individuals do things a little differently, and they found out that you can actually take advantage of those. And this is what actually started me on the path to age reversal, on a path of searching for only longevity. Our first longevity zone is Okinawa, Japan. And in Okinawa, Japan, women live to 86, men live to 78. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's much longer than the U.S. average, which is now, anyone know the U.S. average now? 77. It went down 2 years. Did you know that? Went down 2 years in the last 2 to 3 years. In Okinawa, they have 1/5 of the heart disease. They have 1/4 of the breast and prostate cancer. Anyone know what the #1 killer in the world is? Heart disease. That's right. Absolutely true. They have a plant-based diet, but they have something called Ikigai, which is very interesting. Joan, which is right here. Joan, say hi to everybody. She's the one who picked me up, and I want you to know that although Joan is in her 80s, she just started a job down the street cooking for a nursing home. How many people want to say, good job, Joan? All right, very good. Now, Joan is actually enjoying an element of longevity that has been made famous by the Okinawans. Ikigai in Japanese means the reason you get up in the morning. It's your purpose, it's your motto, it's your mission, right? For Fumiyasu at 84, his mission is the Senior Olympics. His favorite event? The pole vault. Any pole vaulting, Joan? Not anymore? You hung up your pole a while ago, okay? When we look at the Okinawans, most of them grow their own food, but they eat more, but way less. How is that possible? Well, the foods that they eat are very high in nutrients, very low in calories. When you look at their diets, their living pattern, it's a very natural sort of earth to table sort of existence. For Serie Toguchi, at 104 years old, he's enjoying many elements of longevity here. He's getting sunshine, he's getting fresh air outside, he's eating from his garden, he's getting exercise in his garden. But what's very interesting is the interviewer was not interested in any of those things. He said, Mr. Toguchi, tell me, why the red gloves? And he said, well, they're easy to find. It's true. When we look at Okinawan culture, they also have something called the moai, which is a group of individuals who go through life together and help one another. Now, I'm going to ask any of you have a group of people who get together with you at least 3 times a week, non-relatives. Wow, 0. In America, we tend not to do this so much, but this group of individuals supports one another, and that factors into their longevity equation. I have some bad news about Okinawa. Their longevity edge is weakening. They now have the highest rate of obesity in all of Japan, and it is partly due to the fall of all modern civilization, the Golden Arches. They've moved away from their traditional sort of way of living, and they've adopted a more Western type of lifestyle. We will now move to Italy. And in Italy, you will find an island on Sardinia and a village called Silanus. And you will meet a shepherd called Tonino. And Tonino works from dawn to dusk, splitting wood, fixing fences, and he only needs help of a little cane every once in a while. Anyone 74 and still work full time or older? Anyone? Wow, good for you guys. That's great. Wow, you're a machine. That's fantastic. I love it. In the Sardinian culture, the family is number one. Every week, their entire immediate and extended family members get together for a giant meal residing by the patriarch, which is 103 here. Now, normally who lives longer, men or women? Women, right? Now, when you look at the Sardinian culture, men live as long as women. And the theory is that men have less stress. So they can rely more on women to support them. The Sardinians also have a very active outdoor life. However, the criticism of these longevity zones, in fact, I'm only talking about really 3 of them today, but there's really 6 of them. Is there anyone here that can name all 6 zones of longevity? If anyone can do that, I will give you a free consult. Anyone do it? I give you 2 already. What are the others? Okay. Where in Greece? Okay. What else? Yeah, it's interesting that you should mention that. Every single blue zone or long-lived zone is an island except for 2. Did you know that? And the other is a peninsula, interestingly enough. So the criticism is that people on the island tend to marry and reproduce with who? People on the island, right? So it's kind of a genetic incubator. So their theory is that the people initially on these islands had these genes for longevity, and so everybody is now enjoying those genetic features. So that's the critique of these longevity zones. Giuseppe is 85, and hopefully he won't eat this because he's going to lose some longevity from that. However, Giuseppe's mindset definitely helps him. The interviewer said, Giuseppe, you're 20 years older than the average retiree. Don't you ever feel tired and want to stay home? And he says, I feel tired all the time. And he said, well, why don't you just take a break? He said, if I stayed home all day, then I would be sick. Kind of the opposite the way most Western and modern societies think. Sardinia also has an amazing soil. Their grapes have 300% more resveratrol and quercetin, which are compounds protective for heart disease, in their grapes than compared to the Italian mainland grapes. Also, they found that 80% are direct descendants from the initial inhabitants of Sardinia. Unfortunately, Sardinia is also weakening. 10% of them now are obese. What is the percent obesity in America? Anyone know? 90, not 90, no. No, thankfully not. It's around 36 right now. So this actually seems good, but when you realize that in Sardinia, the rate of obesity several decades ago was 0. Did you know that? It was 0. And also the criticism is there's only 2,400 of these individuals in Solano, so can you make any conclusions about only 2,400 people? Well, really, the most important conclusion is, what about me, right? Can I live to 100? And I took this challenge onto myself, so I went on my own exploration to one of the blue zones not mentioned yet. I'll give you a hint. It's a Spanish-speaking country. Anyone know? Not Spain, no. Where is it? No, not the Andes. They don't, no. It's Costa Rica. That's right. Nicoya, Costa Rica. Now, Nicoya is actually a peninsula of Costa Rica. Again, more isolated. And I saw this very interesting description, and it's in Spanish. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, there is a convenient translation underneath. And they attribute it not just to their food, but their way of life. They want to preserve this culture of longevity in Nicoya. I had a privilege while I was there to interview one of their champions who was turning 107. Of course, her name was Maria, right? And Maria gave me the opportunity to interview her, and I said, well, wow, what is your secret? So I was able to ask her lots of different questions and kind of glean from her lifestyle, perhaps some things that would help us to live longer. But of course, before I did that, I said, well, can I bring you some food? She says, of course, that's fine. And I said, well, let me help to feed you. She says, I can feed myself, thank you. She was amazing. I really appreciated my time with her. She was very friendly. She was very vibrant. She was actually funny. She cracked a few jokes during our interview. So I loved every minute of it, and I learned quite a bit. But the question is, what about you and I? You and I aren't from islands. We don't live in these tropical areas. We maybe don't have our own gardens. Our last blue zone that we're going to talk about is in the worst air quality of anywhere in the United States besides maybe New York. And where is that? Loma Linda, where we meet a group of happy seniors. One of their champions was 100 years old when she renewed her driver's license. And did you know they denied her the renewal? They said, we're only going to renew it for 5 years. She came back 5 years later, I want to renew it again. And they gave it to her. Marge Jetan, one of the champions of this longevity zone. Here shown fueling up her car, of course not indulging in anything over here, is one of the longest lived nurses on planet Earth. Frank Shearer, a physician, was the oldest water skier at the time of the article at 100 years old. Any water skiers here? Anyone water ski? Anyone know somebody 100 years old and water skiing? No? No? I don't know. So at that time, he had outlived the average physician by about several decades. Here is another interesting individual in this longevity zone who was one of my teachers during medical school. Dr. Ellsworth Wareham, cardiothoracic surgeon. At 91, still performing open heart surgery. Now, would you allow a 91-year-old to cut your chest open? Would you be a little afraid of that, maybe? How many of you would be afraid? How many of you said, I'm going to do it? Did you know I would say I'd do it? Because I was in the operating room with Dr. Wareham. And I promise you, his hands were rock solid steady. The thing that impressed me most weren't his hands, though, was more his attitude. What I found out was whenever there was a complication or something would start to go wrong, Dr. Wareham was never upset. He was never excited. And he would say, okay, ligate here, suction here, expose there. And I asked somebody, I said, why is he not excited or like upset with the residents or the med students? And they said, simply, he's been doing open heart surgery longer than any of us have been alive. So he knows what complications come, right? Lydia Newton, at 112 at the time of the writing of the article, was among the oldest 20 people on the face of the earth. The article author says, is it good genes? Is it divine intervention? Well, he says God may or may not have something to do with it, but their religion does. Of course, this is the Seventh-day Adventists, our final blue zone, not an island, not a peninsula, not an isolated area, but they come from all races, all walks of life, and the common bond is their religion and lifestyle. So let's take the best of all worlds. They have a plant-based diet, generally, don't smoke, mostly, generally don't drink, family-oriented, and they have daily physical activity. Let's take a look at a secular article. This is an old article from Newsweek, but what I liked about it, I have to confess, is that I put this giant red arrow here. Number one, you are female. Number two, what? You are Seventh-day Adventist. What I thought was very intriguing, anyone see this? You started formal schooling after age 6. How many of you heard the book Better Late Than Early? Did you know that your education has to do with not just your mental development, but this is a pathway to live forever, right? This is very much tied to this. Does that make sense? Do you think your mental health matters in your longevity? Do you think your education matters? Sure it does. And here they were actually recommending children start when? Later, right? After age 6. So it'd be 7, 8, stuff like that. Do you remember anyone else who said that? Oh, interesting. Very, very fascinating. This is an old article, also from U.S. News and World Reports, the 11 health habits that will help you live to 100. The first one is very simple. Those who retire expire. So don't retire, okay? Be like Joan. Go help out at that nursing home, cooking them healthy meals, right? Go help out with your school, helping the students. I want you to know I work with a lot of individuals that are sick. Many of them are old, but there's two different groups. One group are my patients. They are elderly. They are sick. Another group is also elderly, but they're healthy. And you know who they are? They're the volunteers pushing them in the gurney. That's what you want, is you want to maintain your purpose, your ikigai in life of service. How many people here floss every day? Wow, a lot more than I thought. How many people are aware, though, that if you floss every day, you live 2 years longer than the person who doesn't floss at all? Were you aware of that? Pretty amazing, right? Yeah, there you go. And the author of the flossing studies actually said that if he got more numbers, more people enrolled in his study, he could approve twice a day. So that's very interesting, to be able to floss every day. And a lot of people say, well, you know, that wouldn't be intuitive. How would you know that? Well, I think it is intuitive. How many of you can tell me what happens when you floss and you haven't flossed in a while? What happens? Your gums bleed. Now, that doesn't mean that the floss caused the bleeding. They were inflamed before you flossed. Did you know that? The other thing is that flossing is very simple, very easy. How much does it cost to get a piece of floss? It's a piece of string, right? If you're broke, you can actually reach into your sock, pull out the little string. Sorry, ladies, I didn't mean to do that. You're like, don't do that to my laundry. But that's my point, is it's simple. And how long does it take to teach someone to floss? 30 seconds, right? And that's the thing, is it's simple, But they are thinking that what is happening is that with these inflamed gums, since your mouth is one of the dirtiest places on your body, you get bacteria that goes into the bloodstream and it causes inflammation in the heart. What's the number one cause of death? Heart disease, that's right, exactly. Number 3, I'm going to ask a question before I get into this. Does anyone like investing their money? Who likes investing and earning returns on their money? Nobody invests their money here. You know, I'm just telling you, because people say, well, I'm earning, you know, right now I'm earning 4.5%, 5% on my money, but you know what the bank is lending it out at? Exactly, 8 or 10. So they're doubling their money, and you're just giving it to them for gravy, pretty much, right? But how many of you would like to earn 100% on your money? How about that? 200%, 300%? Would that sound good? Sounds too good to be true, right? And if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. But watch this. There is something that you can get 100% on your investment. For every hour that you exercise, you will live that hour over again. And then 2 or 3 hours on top of that. Did you know that? And when they've looked at the exercise studies, they've gone all the way up to literally 600 minutes per week. How many of you know someone who exercises 600 minutes per week? Oh, only 2 of you. Now that comes out, just so you know, if you're doing it 6 days a week, it comes out to 1 hour and 40 minutes. That's a lot, right? And the intensity of those studies were about 5 METs. To give you what 5 METs is, 5 METs is kind of a slow jog for most of us. That's 5 METs. But people will ask me, they say, well, is there a benefit to more than that? And I say, there may be, but there's no studies. Do you know why there's no studies? No one does it, right? There's not enough numbers. They have people who are like marathon runners, but they're a small group of people. So what they've found is that the exercises that benefit you most, how many of you work out? How many people work out? Raise your hand. Did you know you only need about maybe 2, 3, 4 different exercises? I'll give you an example. They took guys, and the measure of guys who work out is like, hey, what's the measure? Bench, right? They want to know what you can bench. So they got their max bench, and then they weren't allowed to do bench anymore. For 8 weeks, they just did squats. That's it. Now, at the end of the 8 weeks, they tested their max bench again. What do you think happened? It went down, you think? What do you think happened? It went up. Did you know that? Even though they didn't touch the bench. Why? Because when they were squatting, think about all the muscles you use in that motion. Anyone know someone who does carpentry or masonry? Do you know what masons do all day? Squats and deadlifts, right? That's what they do. So compound work type movements, they're finding now are much more effective for your body, right? Think about this movement, right? This is a great movement for working out, but what does that look like? Chopping a tree, right? Squats, deadlifts, bench, pull-ups, all those are compound movements. They're very, very healthy. And people will ask me this question, well, what kind of exercise should I do? It's very simple. What exercise will you do 6 days a week? Probably walking the dog, right? Or something like that. Do you know what the number one reason why people quit exercising? Banana splits? No. Thankfully, no. It begins with an I. Injury. You know the number one reason why people keep exercising? A friend. Right? So people say, how can I start off? I said, well, there are studies that show that you get benefit even from 6 minutes a day. Did you know that? Anyone read the recent study on Alzheimer's for 6 minutes a day? 6 minutes a day of HIIT. Does anyone know what HIIT is? Who knows what HIIT is? High intensity interval training, sure. So even just small amounts of exercise are very beneficial. So what I would say is when you go to shop, instead of driving around for 5 minutes to find the closest possible parking space, just park in the first parking space and then use that 5 minutes to get a little more exercise. Instead of pushing the elevator to go down 1 floor, take the stairs, right? That's how you can incorporate exercise. And people say, yeah, but who really does that? I really do that. When I go to fly to work, I can't actually work in my home state because of the thing that begins with a P and ends with an endemic, but I won't tell you what it was. So I have to fly out of state because I didn't drink the juice. I drank that juice, though, because I was already immune, that's why. But I fly out, and when I stay at the hotel, I purposely, guess what floor I choose? Top floor, that's right. And I take the stairs every time I go in and out because I can get my hit, right? Climb 5 flights of stairs, how long is that going to take you? Probably a minute, right, or so, maybe a little bit more. So I get my hit automatically without even thinking it because I want that minimum 6 minutes for sure. That's a recent study, but I'm not saying that all of you should necessarily do HIIT. You should talk to your doctor, of course, right? I have to say that. Number 4, what's the most important meal of the day? How many of you eat a fiber-rich food for breakfast every day? Wow, only about 7 people. Wow. What they found is that if you have a fiber-rich food for breakfast, it controls your blood sugar. Not just for that meal, not just for that day, but did you know you live longer as a result? That's why when you look at cultures, did you know that every culture has a grain associated with it? Like there's maize in Africa. You have rice in Asia. You have wheat in like places like northern India. Does that make sense? Every culture has some kind of grain. How many of you can say that I get at least 6 hours of sleep every night? Raise your hand. I'm going to give you a little clue to show if you are sleep deprived or not. How many of you who are getting more than 6 hours of sleep do not need an alarm clock to get up for your job? Okay, now keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. How many of you do not sleep in more than an hour and a half on your day off? Keep your hands up if that's true. Lastly, those of you who are still raising your hands, how many of you remember your dreams every night? Wow, there's only about 5 people with their hands still up. Every one of you who did not say yes to those things is probably sleep deprived to some degree. Because of course your dreams occur during what kind of sleep? REM, right? And now they're looking at the phase 3 sleep, which is the deep sleep. Now my mother was recently talking to her physician about cancer. Now I was a little surprised, honestly, because cancer doesn't run in my family, neither side of my family. But she did get something that begins with a V and ends with an vaccine. So I don't know if that's what happened or not. But it was like here twice plus the boost, and it was right there. That's where it started. Kind of odd, but I don't know. So anyway, so she's talking to her oncologist. And so I went to my university, and I wanted to find out the big thing on sleep now. Do you know what it is? Oh, I just told you. The big thing on cancer is sleep. I talked to a PhD student who apparently his brother, I had spoken for a week of prayer, and he made a decision for baptism. And he said, yeah, you know my brother. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. What are you doing? He's like, I'm a PhD in cancer cell biology. And I said, what's the biggest thing? He's like, sleep. He's like, I just am publishing it this month, and you'll find that sleep is when you repair not just your body, but your DNA. Did you know that? Very important to not just get enough sleep, but get that deep stage 3 sleep. Now, I hope this, isn't hard to think about, but eat whole foods, okay? A lot of people will say, well, what does that really mean? Well, I'll give you an example. There was a Finnish study on smokers, okay? And when people smoke, what do they tend to get more of? Cancer, right? What kind of cancer? Lung cancer, throat cancer, esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, colon cancer, right? But mostly people think of what? Lung cancer, right? So they did 3 groups. The first was the control group. And what is the control group? They just smoke, that's all. And they just follow them, see if they develop lung cancer. The second group, they gave them foods that were high in antioxidants. Vitamin A, C, E, and selenium. And what foods are high in vitamin A? Carrots. What foods are high in vitamin C? Lemons or citrus, right? Did you know red peppers are really high in vitamin C? How many people knew that? Did you know guavas are like massively high in vitamin C? Like a little guava, little guayaba. I know my Hispanic friends know that. Little guayaba is like 140 milligrams, more than 3 oranges. Did you know that? It's about the size of a golf ball. Some guayabas are bigger, of course, right? There's pink, there's yellow, there's different varieties. But guavas are very high. What's high in vitamin E? Almonds. Aloe vera, yes, I like that. What's high in selenium? Brazil nuts, yay, Brazil nuts, right? But also seeds, grains, things like that. So they gave these people those foods, and do you think they developed more or less cancer than the control group that's just smoking, not changing their diet? Less. The third group, they gave them the same amount of vitamin A, C, E, and selenium as the food group, and then they followed them, more or less or the same cancer? More. And so they had them stop these vitamins, and they said to everyone, stop smoking, obviously you're getting lung cancer, right? But that's one of the rare studies that people don't read about, that when you mess with stuff, sometimes you don't always improve it. Now, if you do want to concentrate your nutrients, because a lot of people say, well, the soil is what? Depleted, right? Well, do you know how you can concentrate nutrients? The ladies back there are doing a very delicious way of concentration, but the only thing you're missing is what? The fiber, right? So do you need fiber? Sure. But if you want to concentrate it, you would at least keep the nutrients in the same ratio. Does that make sense? Let's take a look at number 7. A lot of people assume that longevity is just what you're eating, but it's not always what you're eating, it's what's eating you, right? I want to ask, how many people here have a sister? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you have a close relationship with that sister. Oh, most people, that's good. Did you know if you have a close relationship with your sister that you have less depression over your lifespan and you will live longer? Very interesting. Very interesting. How many people have heard of the type A personality? Type A personality, those individuals actually live less. But there's 2 traits of the type A personality that cut their life short. Anyone want to guess which one? Not stress. Stress can actually be good, right? Is marriage stressful? Sure. Is getting a degree in law or medicine? I met somebody who was a CRNA and a JD or something like out here, right? But yes, right there. So was law school, was it stressful, or was it just a piece of cake? It was stressful, but is it worthwhile? Sure it is, right? Things that are stressful are worthwhile. So it wasn't stress. It was anger and hostility is number 1. And the other negative trait was intolerance to others. That is actually what shortened their lifespan. In fact, studies show that if you lose your cool just for 1 second, for the next 3 to 4 hours, your risk of fatal heart attack goes up 300 to 400%, independent of the epinephrine and norepinephrine that you've produced. Number 8, I have to confess, I did change what the article said. It said, live like a Seventh-day Adventist, but I'm just going to invite you to be a Seventh-day Adventist. That's okay. Join a Blue Zone. That's all right. If you can't move to Sardinia or Nicoya, you can join the Adventist church, right? You can have the advantage of joining that Blue Zone. And I just want to share this. The studies have mostly been on African American U.S. individuals. They tend to have a higher risk of diabetes and hypertension. But did you know when those African American individuals join the Adventist church, that risk comes down? Isn't that amazing? Number 9, be a creature of habit. How many of you know someone really old, really old? Do they have a set routine? Yes or no? Yes, right? When you wake up, when you exercise, when you eat, you should ideally try to do that the same time every day. I have to make a confession here. I probably change about 5 to 7 time zones every month in my speaking schedule. And people say, well, you're sustained and you're blessed and this, and yes, I am, but I'm just telling you, I'm tired sometimes. But I'm willing to lose some of my longevity to raise all of yours, right? Number 10, how many people can say that they get to see all of their relatives once a week? Everybody related to you, you see once a week. Wow, a couple people raised their hands. You're like Sardinia. That's really good. Excellent. You want to stay connected to your family and your friends. Number 11, anyone know the marshmallow study? Who knows the marshmallow study? Okay, explain the marshmallow study to me. Well, you raised your hand, so now's your chance. Okay, well, tell me what the marshmallow study was. It was actually done at my alma mater at Stanford. Okay. Yes, so that is correct. Very good. Good memory. So the study was with excellent. The study was with young children. When we say young, we mean like 1, like 2. Like how much impulse control does a 1-year-old have? I'm serious. And the experiment was, here's a marshmallow. You can eat it now if you want, but if you wait till I come back, I'll give you 2. And they actually clocked the time that this little child, toddler really, was resisting immediate gratification. Now, what do you think many of the kids did? Right? And that was the end of the marshmallow, right? Now, some children waited, but then eventually ate, but a few of the children actually waited till the researcher came back, and they got the second marshmallow. And what they found is that ability to delay gratification was related to every form of success in their later life. Did you know that? And this marshmallow study was done kind of in conjunction with the one trait that predicts for longevity. And they found that was conscientiousness. And what does it mean to be conscientious? It means you follow through. It means you say what you mean and you mean what you say. You don't try to, make shortcuts for yourself. Not 1, 2, skip a few, 8, 9, 10, right? You're actually doing what you set out to do. Now I want to share with you just cutting edge. I have done my visits to the most recent blue zones. I went to Nicoya. I looked at the Adventist champions. Anyone know Dr. John Scharfenberg? He's turning 100, one of my friends. And so I got a chance to meet him, talk to him. But just recently, does anyone know what the last blue zone is? The last longevity zone that they visited? It is, what? You mentioned Greece, that was Ikaria. That was the one recently. But the one just 3 or 4 months ago was Chinese women in Honolulu in Hawaii. Did you know that? And I got a chance to meet Auntie Rhoda and interview her. So I've had an opportunity to interview individuals from these regions of longevity, and I have synthesized this, and I'm now applying it to my own life, and my hair is back to black. Yes. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser. We have not even launched the website yet. I'm going to release it at ASI. Anyone going to ASI? I'm giving you a jump start, a head start, okay? My only longevity program, which I'm doing with Ashley Snedden, the woman that I love, dietitian in her internship right now. She couldn't be here. She had to go back to her internship. But the 11 steps that I'll give you are actually called eternal life, interestingly enough. And I will give you a preview absolutely gratis, absolutely free. Number 1, election. That means you have to choose to be healthy. You have to choose something positive. But you don't just choose, you need help, right? Anyone know who Mark Twain was? He says, I've quit smoking thousands of times. What does he mean by that? He started up again, right? Because we can make a choice, but if we don't have any power, it's not going to help us. How many of you know the first step of the 12 steps? Anyone tell me what the first step is of the 12-step program? Tell me. Yes, feel your absolute helplessness and your need of freedom from alcohol in the case of alcohol, right? I had to laugh. I was speaking in Scandinavia for a retreat, an Easter retreat, And I was talking about addictions with my sister because she was set free from 5 different drugs, 6 different drugs. And I said, hey, do you guys have AA here in Sweden? And they're like, well, of course. I said, well, what do they call it? I'm serious. That's what you said. That was hilarious. But this is the decision making. This is the power. This is trust in God. If you don't have that power, you cannot put into practice what you know to be right. Most of us don't need more information. We need more inspiration. We need more transformation. And that's why I put the pictures up so you can know that it's possible. I am turning 49. Did you know that? And I work out with guys that range from 19 years old to 25 years old. Now, they have instant recoveries, right? So they're wanting to do another set. And it's a joke, basically. Whenever we ask, well, whose turn is it? It's always Riesenberger. Because I'm trying to wait and recover as long as possible, right? With these like beasts that I'm working out with, basically. So trust in God is what we need. We need more transformation. We need more inspiration, not more information. Because if we just would implement what we know, we would all be much healthier. Number 3, of course, is exercise, rest. This is nutrition, but also nature. How many of you know about forest bathing? How many have heard of forest bathing? In Japan, they're putting forests, parks, in so many blocks in the city. Why? It actually lowers your blood pressure. Did you know that? Yes, the compounds in the trees. That is correct. Those are actually healing compounds. In touch with nature, and there's multiple factors for that. How about fresh air? How many of you know about nitric oxide? Who knows about what nitric oxide is? Nitric oxide, what does it do for you? Lowers your blood pressure, yes. What else? Opens the arteries. Well, erectile dysfunction, right? Yes, that's true too. Did you know that just breathing deeply through your nose will raise your nitric oxide? How many knew about that study? 3 people, not too many. Getting as much light as possible. How many people can tell me, is it better to breastfeed or bottle feed? Okay. Does anyone know, is there any mineral nutrient that breast milk is deficient in? Anyone want to throw it out there? What do you think it is? What do you think it's deficient in? Everyone would say it's perfect, but it's not. I'll give you a hint. Before, back in the day, how long did they keep mom and baby in the hospital? And what did all those children develop? They turned yellow, jaundice, and what was the treatment? Well, they put them in the Billy Lights, but what's the real treatment? Bong, right? Vitamin D. Did you know breast milk is deficient in vitamin D? Yes, it is. So whether you believe in God or evolution or Buddha or Muhammad or Allah or any religion, it doesn't matter. You weren't meant to get vitamin D this way. Does that make sense? You want to get as much light as you can without burning. You want to love and be loved. You want to do something for someone every day with no ulterior motive. Very important. How many people know about cold plunge? How many people know about cold plunge? A few of you. You want to not only drink enough water, but you want to cold plunge. Now again, I have to say, consult your physician before you do any of this, right? Because you get more growth hormone, you get more testosterone, you get lower cortisol. Did you know that? There's so many benefits to cold plunge now, and I'm telling you, I went to Norway just recently, and we went to a lake, and that lake was frozen over. And what did we have by the lake? What do you think? Sauna, that's right. And this was the old school sauna where they had a pipe, a stove, they had the rocks, we poured the water on the rocks. And what do you think we did when we got hot enough? We jumped in the water, that's right. It was awesome. So cold plunge as well as drinking enough water. Family and friends. Remember, the Sardinians, they are connected every single week to everybody that's in their family. Now, I will wager to say you want your family and friends to be positive influences on you, okay? Those that are making positive health choices, because what's the number one reason why you keep exercising? A friend, right? This last one is the unique one that I'm going to share with you. Most of us do not know how to evaluate how the program is working, because it's not the same for everybody. Some people can eat a certain way, other people cannot. Generally, the recent literature that showed out about legumes or beans, for every 2 tablespoons of beans you eat a day, you increase your longevity significantly. Did you know that? But for some people, beans are poison. Isn't that interesting? So how do you know if your diet, if your exercise, if your water intake, if your everything, how do you evaluate if it's working or not? I'm going to show you right now that every one of you can do this on a limited basis, but I can show you how to do it everywhere. How many of you know when you're dehydrated? Raise your hand. What sort of symptoms do you have? You feel dry mouth. What else? Headaches. What else? The what? Thirsty. Oh, thank you. That's easy, right? What else? You feel tired. What else? What can you look at and know that, uh-oh, I think I'm dry? Your skin. What else? Your pee. How many of you know Dr. Ramon Issa? Anyone know Dr. Ramon Issa? He was actually one of my classmates at Loma Linda, and I was explaining this to him. And I said, you have to understand, all of these methods of evaluation are very simple. He's like, yes, pee bad, need more water. I'm like, it's like that, exactly. But I can show you how to do that with every system of your body. Because your body wants to be healthy. Did you know that? It wants to enjoy health. And it will speak to you if you listen. And if you don't listen to when it whispers, you will stop when it screams, right? So, what can we do? Let's take a look at the best of all these 3 worlds, and we'll have a little interview with the photographer who went to these zones of longevity. Can you hear? Who cannot hear? Too loud? Too loud? A little too loud. Okay. All right. So this photographer, he went to 3 of the longevity zones, to Sardinia, Okinawa, and Loma Linda. And just so you know, he is not Okinawan, he's not Sardinian, he's not Seventh-day Adventist. This is just an outsider's perspective of these zones of longevity and what he took away from it.
My name is David McLean, and I traveled to 3 different cultures of longevity, which are Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, and Loma Linda, California. So we went and spent time in each of these places and tried to learn about their cultures of longevity and exactly what it is they're doing to live vital and healthy lives well into their hundreds. The first longevity hotspot we traveled to was Sardinia, Italy. So in this region, men are living as long as women, which is just an incredible phenomenon. Science isn't exactly quite sure why, but one of the theories is that it's because the women wear the pants and that men have less stress as a result. But also the Sardinians have a fanatical zeal for the family. And we dropped by 4 generations of one family, and every weekend they shared this giant meal. And this social component of longevity is incredibly important. And at the time, I remember thinking, this is what being alive and having a family is all about. But the cultures of longevity in Sardinia are rapidly disappearing, and the root of them are a move away from traditional natural food in conjunction with a sedentary lifestyle. We spent time with a woman who was almost 100 and her great-granddaughter, and later that day we saw that same great-granddaughter eating potato chips, and we wondered, will she live as long as her great-grandmother?
The answer is no.
Okinawa is an archipelago in the far south of Japan, and it's home to the longest lived people on Earth. And we met numerous people who were into their hundreds, who were leading active and very healthy lifestyles. You know, the 90-year-olds were biking and fishing 8 miles offshore with these old diving techniques on the reef. And we met an amazing woman who was over 100. Her name was Kamada, and she had been in a moai. The rough translation is that it's a group of friends who go through life together and help each other. And the energy and vitality that they would get from that, I believe, factored into the longevity equation as well. And the Okinawans have this wonderful word. It's called ikigai, and it translates roughly into the reason for which you wake up in the morning. And all of these centenarians had ikigai, and I don't think it's an accident that that's part of the reason that they're living so long. So one of the cornerstones of Okinawan longevity is caloric restriction. Yet, interestingly, they're eating a lot of food. The trick is that the food that they're eating is all low in caloric density. And that food included these beautiful miso soups that were filled with carrots, seaweed, onions, and potatoes. And like the Sardinians, the Okinawans grew most of the food themselves in their gardens, and they would go to the store for very little. But Okinawa is losing its longevity edge. Okinawa has the highest rate of obesity in all of Japan, and it was quite shocking and somewhat disturbing to see this culture of longevity disappearing right before our eyes.
Listen to this.
By far the most surprising fact that I took away from this story is that Seventh-day Adventists outlive their American counterparts by about 10 years. What are they doing? Quite simply, the Seventh-day Adventists, who largely populate Loma Linda, California, have a religion that reinforces positive, healthy behaviors. For example, if you're a devout Seventh-day Adventist, you are a vegetarian, non-smoker, non-drinker, who takes a Sabbath every Saturday, where for one whole day you have to just unplug. So we met many incredible people there. The most incredible by far was a woman named Marge Jatan, who had just turned 100 and renewed her driver's license. So we went for a cruise, but before we did that, we had to go through her morning routine where she lifts weights and rides a stationary bike. And interestingly, the Seventh-day Adventists are the only culture of longevity that we visited who are not losing their longevity edge. And I photographed a baptism at this church. And I remember thinking, wow, this is the perfect example of how this religion is still growing and carrying forward. I think in America we tend to marginalize old people, kind of put them away in retirement homes. But these amazing people in 3 different cultures represent the potential to see your great-grandchildren grow up, a potential to be healthy and happy well into your older years. And that to me was the biggest thing I walked away with from this assignment, was that, wow, I now have this sense of responsibility and control based on choices that I make. I'd read that genetics only account for about 30% of how long you live. So, the majority of how long you live is up to your lifestyle. It's up to you.
All right. So everyone wants to know, what is the secret, right? It must be diet, right? How many people think it's diet? Nobody thinks it's diet. Wow. Well, what's interesting is, did you know that people who are Hindu are more dedicated to vegetarianism than most other people groups? But they're not a longevity zone. How many people knew Buddhist monks were vegan? Anyone know that? Did you know Brahmins in the Indian culture are also vegan? But they're not a longevity zone. Well, maybe it's exercise, right? Did you know that the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study shows that less than 10% of Seventh-day Adventists now exercise daily? It's very low. Maybe it's genetics, right? But that's not true, because when you join a blue zone, you get the benefits. Maybe it's optimism. How many people remember what the personality trait was that predicted longevity? It wasn't optimism. What was it? B. Begins with a C. Yes, there you go. Well, maybe it's faith. A lot of people accuse the Adventists and they say, well, you guys don't smoke, drink, or use caffeine. You know there's another religion that doesn't smoke, drink, or use caffeine? That's right, but they're not part of the longevity zones. But what I'm telling you is that your body was designed to live a long time. and it will tell you, it will speak to you when you're doing things right and when you're doing things wrong. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in how many things? All things, and be in health, just as your soul prospers. That's from the Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition, from the Bible itself. I want you to know that I don't believe the people who are dyeing their hairs, using makeup, doing plastic surgery or Botox, I don't believe they're doing that to just be vain. I believe they're trying to get back to Eden, so to speak. They were meant to live forever and to live forever young because God himself has put what? Eternity in their hearts. Now, I want to give you an opportunity. How many people would like access to the Only Longevity program? How many people would like to know how to reverse their age, get those hairs back, wrinkles go away? All right, I'll give you an opportunity. Here it is. What if the United States was invaded? Wow. That doesn't seem related, right? Where would you go? Would you go to Canada? Well, you got the language. Would you go to Mexico? How would you work? How would you speak the language? I went to help Ukrainian refugees in March of last year. And people were like, well, isn't it a little early? Why don't you wait till the situation's a little more stable? I said, when it's stable, they won't need me. So I went to help them out. And these are the two Adventist families that I helped out. What I thought was amazing is that their daughters were translating for me at the medical clinic and for our dental clinic. So I enjoyed meals with them. I got to work with them. I went and bought supplies with them because all the money that they made, they sent back home. And I told them, I said, if you can get the visas, come stay in my home. And they came. So I'm giving access to the Only Longevity program. I'm giving you a free consult with either me or Ashley for a donation of any amount to support the Ukrainian refugees. And all you'd have to do is go to the South Center, Seventh-day Adventist Church, click under Refugee Aid Project, donate any amount, email Ashley your receipt, and those of you who are tech savvy, scan away, there you go, and then just click a shot of that email. So if you want a chance to chat, that's your opportunity. Now I'll take some questions. Anyone have any questions? Raise your hand.
How specifically did you get your hair turned back?
That's the question. Scan away. I'll talk to you about it. That's fine. Yes, I'll address any specific question minus the Only Longevity program. Did I use copper? That's interesting you mentioned that. If you have certain deficiencies, you are correct. You will actually gray prematurely. But I don't take copper supplementation. I do use some supplements, but not copper. Yes, next question. No questions. Wow. Yes. Ah, okay. So my pre-workout supplement is beet juice. Anyone know why I do that? It's the nitric oxide is what I want, right? They did a study, they randomized beet juice versus berries, pre-workout, and they found that those who drank the beet juice, well actually it was half a cup of beets versus a half a cup of berries, but I juice it to get more, is they actually worked out 5 to 10% longer. So that's what you want. You want to get in more sets, right? You're growing from that last 1 or 2 or 3 reps. Did you know that? That's what you want. Next question. Yes?
You have to choose between exercise and diet. What do you think?
100%. That's a great question. If you had to choose between exercise and diet, what would you do? They've actually found that those with hypertension and high cholesterol who exercise are healthier than those who don't have those things that don't exercise. Did you know that? Now, I'm not saying that's directly related to diet, but is hypertension related to diet? Is high cholesterol related to the diet? Sure it is. So if I had to choose one or the other, I would probably choose exercise because even the best diet in the world, if you're completely sedentary, you're in trouble. Next question. Yes?
What is your source for the beet juice?
What is my source? Beets.
Just beet.
Yes. Yes. My source for the beet juice is beets. And those of you how many people don't like the earthy taste of beets? Put some lemon juice in it. It's really good. Next question. No more questions? Ah, hair loss. Very good. I'm going to leave that one for someone who specifically can talk about, do you know what dihydrotestosterone is? If it's male pattern hair loss, there's lots of different types of hair loss. But I would consult somebody first on that, because as he pointed out, there can be hormonal things that could be problematic. But as far as my particular age reversal program, I'm looking more at reversing the quality of the hair, not necessarily the quantity of the hair. So last question, someone who has not asked already. Someone who has not asked already. Yes, ma'am. That talk in their sleep. Wow, that's interesting. That can be kind of like, there's a center in your brain that keeps you from talking, generally when you're in the REM, so you're not just walking around. Some people, it doesn't matter what you do, but they keep doing it. Some people grow out of it if it's a child or whatever. But I think with those individuals, you got to make sure to keep them safe, number one. Because I knew of one case where a guy actually got up, drove to his parents' house, had breakfast, missed his flight, and drove back home and went to sleep. Now, how he didn't get in an accident, I have no idea. But he sleep drove. That's unbelievable. Okay, that's the last question. Thank you very much for coming. Again, any of you want a free consult with either Ashley and I, feel free. Just go donate any amount. I mean, you could donate any amount you want. And we'll give you an opportunity to consult us personally with some health coaching. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Someone else's.
Is this yours?
This is mine.